If you feel like you might be dealing with bile-induced constipation and you're a little bit plugged up, in this video we're going to answer a viewer question that'll help you understand why this comes about and steps you can take to correct the situation. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So it was over on our bile acid diarrhea and bile acid malabsorption video that Emily showed her appreciation for all of our bile videos. And she asked, can you also talk about bile-induced constipation and bile reflux? So we already have a video on bile reflux and bile reflux gastritis, and we'll put a link to that video in the description below this video. And that video talks about how bile can come down here and then reflux back up into the stomach and create some trouble. But in case Emily was also talking about taking bile supplements and creating like an acid reflux situation, we'll get to that as well. And I don't know Emily, I'm not sure what she was asking about this. I don't know her situation, so I'm not giving Emily any advice. I'm not your doctor, I'm not even a doctor, so I'm not giving you medical advice either. But I want to point out some things to help you understand why this can come about, and I'll put some links in the description below to some studies and papers that'll help you dig into this a little bit more. So first of all, ox bile is a form of supplemental bile that a person can take. And we hear from a lot of people that might take this and they'll end up with some constipation. But we'll also talk about how someone can lead to constipation when they're just improving their bile flow. When they're taking steps to help this bile flow better, that can lead to constipation, and we'll explain how to get around that as well. But first of all, what we want to look at is the fact that bile is this soapy substance that's made in the liver and then it's stored in the gallbladder. But if somebody's lost their gallbladder, the bile will still leave the liver through this biliary pathway and can flow down into the intestinal tract here just out of the stomach. It's called the duodenum. And because bile is this soapy substance, it almost acts like a lubricant. So there's a lot of people out there that will tell you if you're constipated, you should supplement with ox bile because it's a lubricant. And that's going to lube you right up and get that stool out the back door. But what we see in real life is that it's almost the opposite of this for most people. We see in about 1 out of 100 cases of significant constipation, someone can take ox bile and it will actually improve that scenario. And when I explain what's going on, you're going to see why this is the case. In most cases, if someone's constipated and they take ox bile, it will magnify the situation. Because what goes on with this bile is that when we eat food, it's supposed to be acidified in the stomach. The stomach makes this hydrochloric acid stuff, or HCl, and that helps to acidify that food so that we can break it down and get all the nutrients out of that food. So when that acidic product leaves the stomach, when it comes down here into the duodenum, that acidity there is what triggers the gallbladder to squirt this alkaline bile down. So bile is alkaline. So this alkaline bile is helping neutralize the acids that leave the stomach. And there's some bicarb that comes out of the pancreas when all this happens, and that helps neutralize a little bit. But it's the alkaline bile that's the really big player here. So what this means when it comes to constipation is that the stool will move through the intestinal tract at a pace according to its pH level, according to its acidity level. So a stool that is too acidic will often move through here very quickly because this acid is made to hold in the stomach. The stomach lining can hold that acid, but the esophagus is not made to do that. We know that if acid goes back up, that can damage that lining. And when acid comes down here, it can also damage this lining in the intestinal tract. So the body doesn't want that to happen, so it'll say, oh, I know what I can do. I'm going to bring all the water here to help cool this down, and then I'm going to rush this out the back door, and then it comes shooting out the back door and it lifts us off the toilet like a rocket with this crazy diarrhea stuff. So those are magnified versions of what can happen when the stool is leaning too far on that acidic side. But if a stool is leaning too far on the alkaline side, it can slow the pace at which it's moving through the system. And when it slows down, that means it can get more dry and more hard and more difficult to get out the back door. And now I'm reading a magazine on the toilet for an hour and a half. So that's one possible cause of constipation. So what we see is that somebody's trying to improve their bile flow. You may have heard of us talk in our other videos. We use this product called Beet Flow from Empirical Labs. I'm not telling you to use that. I'm just saying what we use. But we hear from a lot of people that will use that product, and what it does is it thins out the bile. It's very common for someone's bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, and then it won't come down and help neutralize those acids and help us really digest our food, and can end up leading to a situation where the body can't really make enough hydrochloric acid to acidify the food. And now all this stuff moving through here is very alkaline because there wasn't enough acid made, and now it's really going to slow down and lead to those constipation issues. But back to this, if somebody has improved their bile flow by thinning it out so that it can flow better, if they improve this bile flow, but maybe they haven't improved the acid side of digestion. A lot of times when someone's bile is not flowing well enough, the body is not making stomach acid like it used to. So if they improve the bile side faster than the stomach acid side, now this stool moving through here is going to be more alkaline. You increase the bile, but not the stomach acid. So now it's going to lean more on the alkaline side, move through here slower, get harder and drier, and be more difficult to move. So that's a possibility of how ox bile, either supplementing with ox bile as a capsule or some kind of supplement form, or improving your own bile flow, can lead to constipation. And we see this all the time. So when we see that happen, then we just want to take steps to improve the acidity level in the stomach. And that could mean supplementing with betaine HCl, maybe a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I usually don't like to use apple cider vinegar when someone's real constipated. I'll explain that in just a minute, but the betaine HCl can work great. Or maybe somebody has a bacterial overgrowth either here in the stomach or the small intestine area, and the waste from a lot of those different types of bacteria can sometimes be very alkaline. So it's kind of alkalizing the stomach and neutralizing any amount of acid that the person is making, or maybe it's alkalizing everything here in the small intestine when all these bacteria are here that really shouldn't be in the small intestine. So it can really magnify a situation, like maybe somebody wasn't making enough stomach acid as it is, or maybe there was bacteria that was kind of alkalizing everything, and then they either supplement with some ox bile or improve bile flow and just increase the bile amount in here at all, could really push it over to a level that's really going to constipate that person. And it's important to understand that these scenarios can happen when someone is either supplementing with ox bile or just taking steps to improve their own natural bile flow, which is what we like to see people do when they have a gallbladder. Because if somebody's going to supplement with ox bile, you have to take it in through the mouth. That's how you supplement with an ox bile capsule, is you take it in through the mouth. But what that does is that alkalizes the stomach. Remember, the bile is an alkaline substance, and a lot of people take their ox bile with their meal. So they're basically turning off digestion when they're trying to improve digestion by taking this alkaline substance, neutralizing any stomach acid that they have, and removing their ability to really break down their food correctly. But even if you use ox bile correctly and you use it away from food, you're still going to alkalize the stomach a little bit. So what we see happen is if someone's taking ox bile here, especially with their food, and they're reducing those acids, then they might get acid reflux or magnified bloating or even more constipation, because reflux comes when this valve is not triggered correctly. This valve, this LES valve at the bottom of the esophagus, it opens so food can come in, and then it closes again so that stuff doesn't come back up and burn us. But it closes because it's triggered by stomach acid. So if someone isn't making enough stomach acid, they just have a little bit in there, this won't trigger to close, but the small amount of acid they have will come back up and burn them. So someone will be like, oh, I don't really get acid reflux, but I started taking this ox bile and now I get acid reflux. Well, it's because you've neutralized a lot of the acids in your stomach. Now there's only a small amount left, so it's not triggering this valve, and the small amount is coming back up and burning them. So they can improve that scenario by taking the ox bile away from the food, or taking steps to further acidify the stomach, so when they eat a meal, it gets acidic enough to trigger that valve to close and stop the reflux. So if someone got constipation because they improved their own bile flow, they would just want to take steps to help acidify this better, or wipe out any bacteria that might be creating that alkaline waste product. You know, we got to get rid of that so it's not alkalizing everything, and just help acidify the stool a little bit more. And if someone was taking ox bile supplements, they could stop doing that until they took steps to improve the acidity in the stomach. or they could change that timing a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second, but what's important to understand is that with a lot of cases of constipation, like these steps are just going to push a person over the fence, but there's other causes of constipation. It was Dr. Emmanuel Rivisi who helped us understand that the body has this natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. So during the day, the body should be in this catabolic state where it's very good at creating energy and kind of breaking down tissues and keeping us going all day. And at night, we move into this anabolic state where the body's very good at sleeping and resting and repairing and rebuilding. The problem is it's very common for someone to get stuck in one of these states most of the time. And if they get stuck in one of those states and they're not really switching back and forth from day to night like the body is supposed to, it can create a lot of health symptoms. So if someone's stuck in this anabolic state most of the time, it can cause the body to send most of the water through the kidneys and less to the bowels. And now those bowels are getting more dry and more hard and difficult to move. So it's very common to see chronic constipation with someone who's leaning too far in that anabolic state. And again, we could be looking at these things that we talked about before over here, where maybe somebody has a stool that's leaning more on the alkaline side. And maybe they're leaning too far on that anabolic side and the water's going more to the kidneys and less to the bowels. Maybe they get up to pee 6 or 7 times in the middle of the night because the body's sending so much water to the kidneys and not enough to the bowels. So with chronic constipation issues, a lot of times it's a combination of these things. But even if you're not chronically constipated, you can see how just pushing things a little bit in one direction could make it to where, oh man, I took this ox bile and now I'm really constipated. So if you want to understand if you might be leaning too far on that anabolic side, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, teaches you how to run these simple self-tests at home that you can do with tools you pick up like at a pharmacy or a health food store and help you understand if you might be leaning too far on that anabolic side. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and that'll just walk you through that process to see if that might be part of what's creating the constipation issue for you. But if you still have your gallbladder and you're supplementing with ox bile, then jump over right now and check out our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow so you can fix that bile flow naturally. And then the ox bile doesn't have to go through the stomach, the bile can flow out here where it's supposed to, and it won't neutralize those acids in the stomach. And if you've lost your gallbladder, jump over and check out our video on how to adjust ox bile dose and timing, and that'll help you correct that issue for you as well. I can't wait to hear about your results.